Another issue we could have when it comes to routing with a multi-layer switch is that we have a misconfiguration with a routed port. And by a routed port, I mean that we've gone into this switch port and said, do not be a switch port. I'm not assigning you to a VLAN. Instead, you're going to act like a router interface. You're going to belong to one subnet, and there may not be any other ports on the switch that belong to that subnet. For example, let's say that I had a multi-layer switch and maybe a layer 2 switch and a router, and I could connect out to these different devices using a couple of the ports on the multi-layer switch. I could do this by just having a regular switch port saying you belong to this VLAN, creating an SVI perhaps, and assigning an IP address to that SVI. But check this out. I could make these ports routed ports. They're going to act like router interfaces, in other words. We're going to go into that interface, say, do not be a switch port, and we assign an IP address, and it's going to act just like a router port. If this does not work, a couple of things we might want to check. Let's make sure that we truly are in routed port and not switch port operation, and let's make sure that we have an appropriate IP address assigned. Before we get into the troubleshooting aspects, let's take a look at a sample configuration. We see an example here on screen. We're going into an interface, gigabit 1/0/15. We're saying no switch port. This is the way we do it. This is the way that we tell a regular switch port not to be a switch port, but to be a routed port. And here, just like we would do on a router interface, we are assigning an IP address. Let's take a look at doing this in the live interface. I'm going to go into, well, before we do that, let's do this. Let's do a show interface gigabit 1/0/1/0/15, and I want to add the keyword of switch port onto that, and it's going to tell me that we are enabled for switch port operation. This is not currently a routed port. Let's fix that. Let's go into interface gigabit 1/0/15, and to make this into a routed port, I'm simply going to say no switch port. And now, if I want to, I can assign an IP address. Let's do IP address 172.16.50.1 with a 24-bit subnet mask. And now, this will show up in the output of show IP interface brief. In addition to the SVI that I have here, VLAN 100, you scroll down just a bit, notice that gigabit 1/0/15, it has an IP address. Look at that. It's currently down because I don't have anything connected to that interface, but notice it's not administratively down. That's something to watch out for as well. If it said administratively down, then I would need to go in and do a no shutdown on it. But what we've done, we have taken that interface, gigabit 1/0/15, and we've converted it from a regular switch port into something that emulates what a router has on a router interface.